Well, hey, church, welcome to part 3 of our Rooted series. This is the extra content part of our message. If you didn't check out part 3, which was growing deeper, going wider, make sure you check that out on YouTube. And that's really the vision of our church in this new season. And so we talked about this in our message, and we really want to grow deeper and become rooted disciples of Jesus. But we don't want to just stop there. We want to go wider, go beyond our campus, go beyond the walls of our church, and really make a difference in our and an impact in our community and beyond. And so that's an important message for you to listen to. That was just really me sharing my heart with you about what God has placed here and just what I believe he's doing in this new season. And so we're going to grow deeper and go wider. But I mentioned a few things that what that looks like and what that's all about that you can go back and check out. But I want to kind of dive in and dig in a little bit deeper on the fourth point that I share with you about growing deeper and going wider. And I mentioned from Paul in Colossians chapter 2, where growing deeper is about the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, and going wider is about that outpouring of that Spirit. And that's the one I want to just take a couple of minutes and drill down on for just a moment, because Paul shares some rich nuggets in the back half of chapter 2 that I want to cover with you for just a moment. So if you have a Bible or if you just want to listen, I'm going to read a couple of verses to you from Colossians chapter 2, because we find in the early section of this chapter that Paul says, hey, God is dwelling within you. The Spirit is dwelling within you. And we know that when the Spirit dwells within us, that the natural outpouring is going to be the fruit of the Spirit, love and joy and peace. It's going to we talked about this, about seeing evangelistic fruit and people saying yes to God. And so I want to share this with you just for a moment, because here's why it's so important to have the Holy Spirit dwelling inside you every day. This is not just a Sunday decision. This is a daily action that we allow the Holy Spirit to come in and to just guide us. Paul tells the church at Galatia, in the book of Galatians, he says, hey, walk in the Spirit. And so we need to walk in his Spirit every single day. But Paul gives us a couple of reasons here in chapter 2 of Colossians that I want to share with you, because in verse 16, he says, hey, don't let anyone judge you. And then in verse 18, he says, don't let anybody condemn you. And those are two pretty big words of being judged and being condemned that no one likes. We don't like to walk into work and be judged or condemned about maybe the way we're dressed or what we're doing or how we're saying or how we're doing some different things. We don't want to go in our own house and be condemned by a spouse or even judge our own children. We don't want to walk into a classroom and feel that condemnation from others. We want to walk freely. We want to live the way that God has called us and intended us to live. And so Paul says, hey, if you don't want anybody to judge you or to condemn you, then you know what you're going to have to do? You're going to have to walk in the Spirit. The Holy Spirit kind of gives us like this thick skin to where we're able to just fend off the enemy's attacks or even those that he's trying to use to trip you up. Because it's easy to go in about your day and feel that judgment or condemnation from somebody. Maybe you don't look a certain way that they do, and so they try to judge you. Maybe you're with some family and extended family members, and they kind of are condemning you because you didn't do this, or maybe you're the quote-unquote black sheep of the family, and maybe you just have some different difficulties that you've been struggling with, that you feel some condemnation. Well, when you're able to walk in the Spirit, have that indwelling of the Holy Spirit within you, then you're not going to allow anybody to judge or condemn you, because you know that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world, and you have God on your side and within you, that you don't have to face any condemnation. There's a great passage in Romans chapter 8, that whole chapter, where Paul talks about, hey, if you're in Jesus, there is no condemnation on you anymore. So don't let anybody else condemn you, because you have the Holy Spirit living inside you. But there's one last verse I want to read when we think about the indwelling of the Holy Spirit here in Colossians chapter 2. And here's what the Bible tells us and reads in verse 20. Paul says, he writes this, he says, hey, if you died with Christ to the elements of this world, why do you live as if you still belonged to the world? I love this, because what Paul's telling us is saying, hey, if you have the Holy Spirit guiding you and living in you and moving within you and helping you see things differently and do things differently, then you don't need to worry about judgment. You don't need to worry about condemnation. And you know what? You don't need to worry about trying to please and to appeal to the world. They have no hold on you, because you are someone, you're belong to someone greater. You belong to Jesus. And so as rooted disciples of Jesus in this new season, as we strive as a church to grow deeper and go wider, we ultimately need to remember that we have got to be led by the Holy Spirit. Because people are going to attack you, they're going to attack us, they're going to attack perhaps our church, because we're going to try to do things maybe even a little bit differently. But we're going to say, we are on this path that God's called us to, because as a church, we want to grow deeper. That's discipleship. That's becoming a rooted disciple of Jesus. But then we don't want that just to stay here. We want to go beyond these walls so that we can go wider. And that's outreach, where we want to reach people where they are. We want to help people with tangible needs, but ultimately, we want to see them say yes to God so that they can become rooted disciples just like you. I'm excited about this series, church. I'm excited about the vision that God's given us, because I believe that in this new season that we truly are going to grow deeper and become rooted. But ultimately, we're not going to keep it here. We're not going to keep it even in our heart. We're going to let that indwelling of the Spirit outpour into our life, where we can truly make a difference and go wider and reach our community and the world for Jesus. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in a couple of weeks for part 4 of our Rooted series.